Hi YouTube, Darth here. This is Battle Plan, and today I'm going to be talking about Conquest Dawnbreaker. If you're not familiar with this series, I talk about all of the bigger picture strategies you can use to help you achieve victory on a particular map. I received a number of requests for Conquest Dawnbreaker, and I'm happy to oblige. So let's dive into this one. Dawnbreaker is one of the most dynamic maps there are in the game. On Conquest Large, there are 5 points: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. And at any given time, one of these points could be under attack. The major difference between Conquest Large and Conquest Small is that Small has fewer vehicles than the spawn points. Rather than 2 tanks, there's just one at the spawn, just 1 stealth jet, and there's no scout choppers at all on Small. But otherwise, they're pretty much the same. As I was saying, the points on this map are often in contention and very little is safe. This is because the average distance between any 2 adjacent points on Dawnbreaker is only about 150 meters. Additionally, there are multiple rooftops that can be accessed by elevators and even more that are frequently staging areas for enemy troops. One bit of advice before I continue: if there are enemies on rooftops, don't expend too much energy trying to take them out if they're not moving to capture flags from that spot. Yeah, they'll kill you from time to time, but they're really not affecting the outcome of the battle at all. They're simply annoying, like mosquitoes. Of course, if you have an unopposed air vehicle, feel free to rake in the kills. With all this mobility, it becomes very difficult to defend any point, especially when enemies could be attacking from literally any direction. Suffice it to say, this is one of the most fluid and dynamic maps in Battlefield 4. So how do you go about coming up with a plan for this map? Well, let's break it down. There are 3 major avenues of traffic on Dawnbreaker. One lane is between Echo and Bravo, another runs straight up the middle, and the last major one is between Alpha and Delta. Plus, there are all sorts of crossovers between them. Most of the enemies attacking you are going to be taking one of these primary routes. As a single player, you're not going to be able to stop or control traffic along all 3 of these routes simultaneously. You're going to have to pick your battles on Dawnbreaker, and that's why I recommend a more defensive approach. Imagine either side of this map as a struggle to control 3 points. Now arrange these points in a triangle. As a player, you're going to want to pick 2 of these points and make this the route you're going to run. You can try to control the 3rd point as well, but you're going to find yourself doing more traveling than shooting and capturing. Only resort to trying to cover 3 if your team is having serious problems defending the other point on your side of the map. If you've got your points under control, start focusing on controlling the traffic of the lanes that run into your points. If you're in armor, this becomes profoundly easier as you have mobility, protection, and firepower. Try and help your team out by intercepting anyone that attempts to access these areas behind your front lines. You can try and get aggressive, but play cautiously since overextending yourself beyond the cover of your infantry means you're facing a lot of enemy armor coming out of the enemy spawn. Now I want to talk about the individual points on this map, and let's start with the map's primary focus, Charlie. Unlike focal points on other maps I've talked about, Charlie matters quite a bit to the outcome of the battle on Dawnbreaker. Firstly, it acts as a magnet to the enemy team's forces. If you can control it, you're likely drawing enemies to it from all 3 lanes. And if you're in armor protecting it, it's like moths to the flame. Secondly, and somewhat related, the point acts as a gateway to either side of the map, and while there are ways around, its central location provides easy access to either side's points. And finally, it provides access to the Commander AC-130 ability. The AC-130 is particularly devastating on Dawnbreaker because it can eventually hit everything on its circular path around the map. Nothing is really safe, and it might be the only reason why there are 2 stealth jets and an MAA on this map. That being said, Charlie is a bloodbath. Every sniper on the map is looking at this point. Every weapon on the ground is trained on it the moment it starts to capture. Armor is frequently rolling into it, there's mines and C4 everywhere, and I'm fairly certain it's a portal to hell. There are only a few points of cover. If you're lucky to survive capturing it, you might not make it out alive. Honestly, this entire map is a bloodbath, as you're vulnerable from just about every angle at every time. So when you're playing as infantry, be sure to move from cover to cover, especially at Charlie. Now that you know how dangerous it is, there are some important avenues of approach to consider when assaulting Charlie. The building to the northeast provides some of the easiest cover that overlooks the point. This is often a hotspot for the US team when assaulting the point. It provides extremely effective cover from enemies below and easy access to the point itself. There are many other approaches, and assaulting players tend to gather around the cover on the point. The capture area for Charlie is limited to the central areas above and below the bridge, so keep an eye out for infantry on the roadways, over the bridge, and next to the supports. One thing to consider is the abundant cover on this map when capturing a point. The size of the capture areas for most points is actually pretty generous, so make use of that when capturing a point. Let's focus on another flag, Echo this time. It's the easiest point to defend on the map. Despite being next to the spawn point for the Chinese team, if the US gets a spawn beacon into the building, they can be exceptionally difficult to eject. It's one of the few points with plenty of hiding areas and cover from the rooftops. If captured by the US, it's a significant stumbling block for the Chinese team as it can effectively block all traffic from their spawn. So if you're on the Chinese team, you definitely don't want it to fall into enemy hands. The Chinese team can equally frustrate the US team by controlling the building between Charlie and Bravo. However, it's a bit of a stretch to keep control of Bravo, and the building itself is not a capture point. Most soldier traffic from Bravo to Charlie goes through this building, so a single squad can really jam up reinforcements to Charlie. A squad in this building can be exceptionally hard to remove, especially if they have a spawn beacon. If you can't get into the building, another way you can lay into the source of reinforcements is from the great vantage points from the bridge and the hills near Charlie into the overlooks into the building. So when is a good time to reach into enemy territory and capture one of the 4 exterior points on this map? Having Charlie certainly makes it easier, but maybe you need to draw a little attention away from your side of the map. Taking a point behind enemy lines is certainly one way to do it. But from my experience on Dawnbreaker, it's generally not enough to turn the tide of battle on a 64-player server. If you can run an amazing defense of a rear point with a squad, then you might be able to pin down enough enemies for long enough for your team to do something. That is, assuming your team is up to the task. But for the most part, this temporary capture gets squeezed by the enemy pretty fast. So if that doesn't work out, try refocusing on what I discussed earlier. The plan for this map is to control your lanes, control the important points you've chosen, and prevent the enemy from gaining access to the areas of the map that they can cause the most trouble. Let's look at some loadouts that can help you out on Dawnbreaker. First and foremost, it's extremely important to have competent armor players on this map. In fact, you might find yourself up against many of the top armor players in the world on Dawnbreaker. There are a lot of long lanes and open areas that make it easy to shoot down enemy infantry and vehicles, and plenty of cover for smart drivers. If your team can keep enemy armor down, it becomes extremely easy to control the map, especially around Charlie. With that in mind, my typical tank loadout on a map like Dawnbreaker is the HE shell, autoloader, APS, and your choice of machine gun as a secondary. As an armored driver, I'm going to recommend you be exceptionally careful if you're trying to take the outlying points. The capture areas are very large for all of them, but there's a lot of cover that enemies carrying C4 can come out and get you. Really, your best bet is to support infantry that's already taking a point on this map. So if enemy armor is giving your team trouble, run as an engineer with mines and your rocket launcher of choice. There are absolutely tons of choke points and hiding spots on this map to lay down mines. On the off chance that enemy air is seriously harassing your team, you may wish to consider a shoulder-fired anti-air missile. For the most part though, if you have a competent mobile anti-aircraft driver, most helicopters are only up for a few moments. If you are the anti-aircraft driver, then I highly recommend getting aggressive with the MAA, equipping the Zuni rockets and proximity sensor. The infantry action is pretty intense on this map, and an aggressive AA driver can bring an amazing amount of pain even from the safety of a captured point. With the amount of armor on this map, you'll want to keep your cover close if a tank starts sniping at you. As this is a very intense infantry map, assault is definitely a good choice if the enemy armor is being dealt with. Now, depending on where you are and how you're playing will influence which weapons you use. If you're being a bit more defensive and cautious, you'll probably want to run with a mid to long range weapon like the AR-160, M16A4, or M416. If you're a bit more aggressive, or you're playing in the tight areas of the map like Echo, Delta, or the building near Bravo, consider balanced weapons like the SCAR-H, L85A2, or ACE-23. If you're interested in trying to hold one of the exterior points, that's Alpha, Bravo, Delta, or Echo, consider running as recon with the tugs and the spawn beacon. Getting your beacon onto the roof of either Alpha or Echo makes it almost impossible to get rid of your squad. Just don't stay up there. And that tugs makes it exceptionally hard for enemies to take the point from you, as you'll always have the drop on them. And as for support, there aren't many safe places to set up a bipod, mortar, or really any other focused gadget. There aren't a lot of great flanking opportunities either, as the battlefield is pretty open. So the huge bullet store you normally get from an LMG doesn't really get put to great use. So you may wish to consider a carbine like the AK-5C on this map. However, you can get some good use out of the UCAV against helicopters, rooftop camping snipers, of which there will be a limitless supply, and the plentiful armor on this map. Consider also running with C4 for the good opportunities you'll have to ambush armor in tight spaces. However you decide to play this map, remember the zones of control and that you'll want to find ways to limit your enemy's access to your side of the map. Staying fast, mobile, and defensive is the best way to ensure your side's dominance of Dawnbreaker. This map often gets out of control for whichever team achieves early dominance, and if you can hold on to that lead, that's the game. Or at least, that's the plan. That's it for this episode of Battle Plan. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a like, and if you'd like to see more Battlefield 4 videos, please subscribe to my channel. If you've got a map in a game mode you'd like to see me discuss in a future episode, please leave a comment below. And as always, thanks for your support and for watching this video, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.